Hey guys, I'm back. I wanted to pick up where I left off. So, I was talking about when I first saw my daughter for the first time. So, when they rolled me up to the little incubator she was in, of course, she was swaddled, so I couldn't really see her legs or anything like that. She looked normal. She had like a little birthmark on her head right here, and a lot of kids with arthrogryposis actually get that same birthmark. It's so crazy. And honestly, her face, the way her eyes were, I was wondering if maybe she had Down syndrome, and I'm being honest, that's how her face was looking. That distinctive look that Downs have. So I remember asking the lady, that if she had Down syndrome, and she's like, no. That she, her head might be a little misshapen due to her not being able to move. So I asked to hold her, and I was told no, that I couldn't hold her because she was in pain. So I had to sit there for 2 weeks. I had to, so I was there for about 4 days. And then after that, I would have to go up. I had no car, no nothing. So I would take the bus, and then I would also use Logisticare. It's a medical transport company. And I used that to go see her. But the problem with that after a while was because I had another child, they wouldn't allow the child to go with me to pick her up, to go see her in the NICU. So she was at the NICU here in Las Vegas at Summerlin Hospital for 2 months. But so I wanted to tell you guys though, so I didn't get to hold her. It took 2 weeks before I was able to hold my baby for the first time. And then that was the first time I was actually able to unravel her and just, how you examine your baby. I was able to examine her and look at her legs and look at her toes and look at everything. And one of her legs would be her foot. It was just like this, positioned on the top of her chest. So her leg was totally twisted. Her hips, she has dysplasia in both hips, which there's a deformity in her hip sockets. So her hip bones aren't even, her thigh bones aren't even put into the socket, into the hip socket. So they were telling me all these things because of course they did x-rays, so they were able to see all of those things. They told me that surgeries and things like that might be able to correct it, but the problem is with kids that have arthrogryposis is their bones always still continue to curve in. So no matter the surgeries and things like that, the bones contract and they still start to curve in. So first, she started in the NICU, she started having trouble swallowing her food, right? Or digesting her food even. She had really bad acid reflux, things like that. So they suggested a G-tube first, because also her airway, it's called laryngomalacia is what it's called, and the flap in your throat, say, that opens and closes for liquids and solids, things like that, and when you breathe, it opens. You don't realize it because you're not seeing it, but there's a flap that sort of opens and then it closes off. That's why when people say I went down the wrong hole or things like that. That's what they mean by that. So, yeah, so then they put the G-tube in. That was working for a while, but then she started to have trouble breathing. Out of nowhere, she would, code out, and her lips would turn blue, and we were still also trying to feed her a little bit of bottle through mouth so that she wouldn't lose that, suction that she had. Okay, you guys probably don't realize it, but I had to pause for a second to go get my daughter from school. So yeah, she got the G-tube put in, and it was helping, but like I said, she started to code out. And it was also because the acid reflux coming up, and then her flap didn't know whether to close or not. So they suggested placing a trachea, doing a tracheostomy. So we, at first, I was like, oh my God, I can't do this, to my baby. And I was so worried about it. But then I realized it was something that we could work towards getting out and things like that. But they stayed putting doubtful thoughts into my mind. They would say things like, if she, and they would tell me if I would talk well, when she walks, things like that. And they're like, well, I'm not going to sit here and tell. I understand that from a medical standpoint, they have to be honest, right? But I've already told them that I understand. I get it. But I don't want to speak anything into existence as far as negativity for her. Because everything was so negative, everything was just I just felt like nobody had hope that I could handle it. And, yeah, so she got the trach put in, and around the time she got the trach put in, she started doing way better. She started gaining weight, things like that. So there were goal weights for her to be able to leave. When she was born 4 pounds 3 ounces. When she left, they had gotten her up to 6 pounds, almost 7 pounds, which was a lot for Jalen, because her body doesn't retain hold the muscle like our body does. I never drink soda much, but this looked so good. I was like, holy shit, I need that. So before I got to take my baby home, I basically had to pass a course. I had to be the one to change out her G-tube, to clean her G-tube every day, change her trach out. She had a feeding pump for her feeds at night and during the day. Most of the time what I did was do the pouring. You pour it, and then you have to, so instead of burping, this was my first child, guys, so everything I knew about taking care of babies, went out of the window, and I kind of just had to make up my own way of how I take care of my baby. So with the G-tube, when you pour the formula down into the container, you pour it in there, and you have to vent it. From Amber. You have to vent it and leave the top open so that the stomach can burp the contents out. It can release the trapped air, because I'm not picking her up to burp her, and then she also has a trachea in there. So the goal for the trachea was to allow that flap in the back of her throat, because her neck was so pushed back, that flap stayed open, and it didn't have the strength to open and close like I was saying. So the trachea was to keep that flap open because the longer the flap stays open, the stronger it gets, and the stronger it retains itself to be able to open and close. So that was the goal of the trachea. I still gave my baby foods. I didn't give a damn. They told me not to, but you know what? Let me tell you this. If I didn't give her the foods that I gave her, she wouldn't have gotten off of that G-tube and that trach as fast as she did. Okay. My first, like I said though, I had to pass a test. I had to stay overnight, and they watch you on camera take care of your baby and do the rounds, you know, doing the feeds, pouring the feeds in, changing out the trach every 3 days, changing out the G-tube every 2 days. So they made sure that these things needed to be changed out so I could show them that I could do it. Okay, now I have to go in the house. I'm going to cut this right here, and I will explain the care for her that I had to experience once we actually passed the test and brought her home. I love you guys. Talk to you later.